Hi everyone and welcome to Dennis Deep Cuts. This is the 50th installment of this fine YouTube series. Today we're going to talk about the best punk and hardcore albums of 2023. Let's see what happens. So welcome to 2024. We're going to kick off the year by giving you a list of the best punk and hardcore albums of last year, 2023. So many good albums that came out last year that I wanted to make another list. Basically, I made a list of the best reissues, and then I made a list of the best albums, and now here's the list of the best punk and hardcore albums. And of course, a couple of these records would have made it into the best albums of the year. But I wanted to do punk and hardcore list because there was so much good music coming out of that scene. I think that scene and that world is incredibly vibrant and exciting. So yeah, and as always, it's very highly subjective, and it's also just the records that I bought last year. I'm sure this list will change over time. New editions will be made, I am sure of that. So yeah, without further ado, let's dig into the best punk and hardcore records of 2023. So in 10th place, we have a band called Stigmatism, Ignorance in Power. It's their first record. They have an EP out before this. They're a New York/Montreal-based hardcore band. It's pretty awesome. It's one of those, it's like New York hardcore from the mid-'80s, kind of like something you would hear on the big city hardcore compilations, or something like New York hardcore the way it is, but not the famous bands, more like Crackdown or Breakdown or any of those bands. It's fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, and then the song's over. The record clocks in on the brisk 12 to 13 minutes, which makes it a fun listen. And if you're into that type of just fast, slow hardcore of the mid-'80s, then the Stigmatism album is definitely something that you need to check out. So in 9th place, we have Poison Ruins from Philly with their debut album Harvest, or as we would say in Swedish, Harvest, because the A with the 2 dots is A in Swedish, and we actually have that letter in our alphabet. I talked about them briefly on the reissues episode because Relapse put out their first 2 cassettes on an album, and I really liked that, and I really liked their first full-length record. They have a very unique sound. I love the guitar work. It's very melodic and really cool. I hear influences like the Northwest sort of punk, about like Wipers or Dead Moon, but in a very dark and demented type of way. Maybe traces of Amoebics in there, and probably just me, but I think because the production is really lo-fi garagey and sort of dark. Early Voivod, I don't know. I don't think it really sounds like early Voivod, but that's just like a feeling that I get. I like it when they go a little bit more melodic, like songs like Augur Die or the song Harvest. They're great, and yeah, it's a really cool, really odd record. I couldn't recommend it enough. Number 8, we have Ratcage, Savage Visions, Sheffield in the UK. Brian Sotheby, it's like a one-man project with this dude. They put out 1 album before this and 1 split, a couple of 7 inches. And this is raw, relentless, fucking intense UK hardcore. It's one of those records that just starts full speed and then it stops at full speed. It's just like, it doesn't let up. Very much, there's a touch of Discharge in it, of course, but very much like UK hardcore, like maybe Heresy and Ripcord. But I also hear a touch of like Swedish hardcore, like Totalitär, or maybe some Anti-Semics in it. And then we sprinkle a little bit of American hardcore in it. It's really awesome because it doesn't let up, and it's so aggressive and so wild and so political. Songs like Savage Visions, Change for a Fiver, and Nothing's Sacred Anymore are true killer tracks. And yeah, if you're into that sort of wild hardcore, then check out Ratcage. Number 7, we have Scowl, Psychic Dance Routine EP, actually, and I did talk about Scowl a little bit, my episode about new hardcore. Scowl's from Santa Cruz, they're great. I know it's only an EP, but I wanted to include it because I think it's phenomenal. I think that there's something happening in hardcore right now where, you know, on one hand you have a band like Ratcage, on the other hand you have a band like Scowl or even Hives, where it's like they're really breaking barriers and they're creating something kind of new and unique with hardcore. Use hardcore template to grow from. I think this EP is a perfect example of that, because half the EP honestly sounds like kind of aggressive indie rock, like kind of Smashing Pumpkins. By the other half, it's just full of like beatdown riffs and breakdowns and fucking gnarly hardcore. And Cat Moss's voice, I mean, just the first song, Shutdown, where she's growling like a maniac, and then the chorus kicks in, it's super poppy. I think that's quite excellent. I think it's extraordinary and interesting, and can't wait to see them live. And I can't wait for their second full length to drop, maybe in 2024. I think they're great. Scowl, can't recommend them enough. On 6th place, Vancouver's Chain Whip, Call of the Knife. It's their second full-length album. They have an EP out as well, and everything's worth checking out. Chain Whip plays one of those like really fast, really intense and propulsive punk rock, bordering on early 80s hardcore. That Killed by Death sound that we love so much. Songs like Teenage Kinks, Redecapitated, and Hate Wave makes this a fantastic record. Short, fast, sharp, focused. Yeah, love this band. They're great. Killed by Death Punk, you ask me. What is that? I mean, if you're looking at, if you're watching this list, you probably know, but you'll see it on when people describe music, or you see it on eBay or Discogs when they write about, oh, it's classic Killed by Death Punk. Killed by Death, before the internet, a lot of the 7 inches of early punk was really hard to find, and even back then they were quite expensive. So there's a compilation series where the first volume actually came out in 1988, where someone collected hard to find 7 inches and put out these like unofficial bootleg kind of records, and they're called Killed by Death, and then that became like a term for a certain style of punk and hardcore of the early 80s, basically. And those comps are pretty awesome, and nowadays, since you can find anything online, they're not really that necessary, but like the first 5 or 10 Killed by Death compilations are pretty great. And Chain Whip, I'm not sure they listen to the compilations, but they listen to the bands on those compilations, and then they just became an awesome band in their own right. Top 5, what have we got? Let's stick around in Canada. Alberta, Canada, Homefront, Games of Power. Their second album, I really, really enjoy their first record, but I think this one's even better, much better actually. Homefront's a duo, so a lot of the music is programmed, especially the drums are all programmed. There's a lot of synths, there's a lot of keyboards, there's a lot of stuff that you might not necessarily think about when you listen to punk rock. The music is kind of punky, but it also has elements of a little bit of everything, like post-punk and new wavy stuff and like synth-driven stuff. Reminds me some, you know, it's like a punky version of New Order, or, you know, you remember that Blitz record when they were awesome and they were not an oi band? A little bit of that vibe into it. But yeah, it's a great record. It's one minor, it's not even a complaint, it's just like a minor thing. When the more punky songs, the more propulsive songs, when you have programmed beats, they have a tendency to become not as dynamic as you want them to be, but it's like super minor complaint. And from what I understand, they have a live band. It'd be interesting to hear these songs live, even though I I love the production. I think the record sounds super cool. New Faces of Death, it's like a total, I don't know if it is, but it sounds like a total homage to She, like the Misfits song where they have the Verli soprano from the first 7-inch, which is one of my favorite Misfits songs ever. And then your song like Contact, it sounds like very much Cure-esque, but weird, like post-punk band. His singing overall reminds me a little bit like a demented Robert Smith, but like in all the best ways, like the melodic language of the Cure, but very different. You have a song like Overtime, the classic like sort of classic like new wave punk rock. Games of Power reminds me a little bit like early 80s Bowie stuff mixed with New Order, which is pretty awesome. And then a song like Born Killer, which sounds a lot like Suicide. So the record's, I would say, all over the place because it sounds, I mean, the production is pretty coherent, but it has a lot of different influences. And this is a fantastic record, and I can't wait to see Homefront live. In fourth place, we have Illiterates, No Experts, from Pittsburgh. Illiterates is fucking amazing. Probably one of my like the discoveries of the year for me. I grew up and I was completely in love with like early Youth of Today and that kind of style, and that's kind of what it sounds like. Like Youth of Today, Can't Close My Eyes, or maybe Side by Side, or a touch of Negative Approach, but a more demented, punky version of that. The singer does sound a little bit like Ray Cappo, but like Ray Cappo, like when he's at his most fucked up and violent. Short, brisk record. Fast, slow, fast, slow, fast done. Yeah, I can't recommend this record enough. Illiterates, No Expert. If you love that type of like mid to late 80s like fast hardcore, you'll like this record a lot. I love it. I think it's phenomenal. Number 3, top 3. What do we got? We got Bugg, Concrete Cowboys from Chicago. Bugg's a part of that whole flat spot record scene where there's at least a couple of records on this list. They're really dominating the hardcore game at the moment, that label. Bugg's great. They remind me a little bit of like, you know, that End It record that came out last year. It was phenomenal. That kind of style of like metal-y hardcore, just on the right side of just being hardcore. It's just mosh parts galore, like all over the records, just like mosh parts. And even when it's fast, just kind of that mid-tempo chugging. The production's crisp, clean. Singing's great. Songs like Get It Out, it's just like fucking mosh party. There's a song called Poser Bulldozer, which is incredible. And then the song Concrete Cowboys is great. Buggin', yeah, if you're into that metal tinged, moshy breakdown type of hardcore, this is the record for you. Yeah. On second place, the best punk album of the year. If you ask them, they would probably say it's the best album of the year on all lists. I am, of course, talking about the Hives with Death of Randy Fitzsimmons. 1994, Refused played in Fagersta, where these guys are from, and they opened up for us. And I've been friends with those guys ever since. Been lucky enough to tour with them quite a lot. Refused did a bunch of tours with them, and Noise Conspiracy as well. And in 2019, Refused and Hives did a US tour together, which was beautiful, phenomenal, great. They're fucking fantastic guys. And one of the things we talked about was that they hadn't released any records in a long time. And they were like, oh, we're working on a new record, and this is 2019, and it's finally here. And it's their first record in 11 years, which is a long time. And it's only their 6th album since the formation of the band. So they move slow, but I gotta tell you, it's worth it. I love this record from start to finish. It might be maybe the best Hives record of all time. The production's great. The songwriting is great. There's like the classic Hives action, Trapdoor Solution, or all the singles are great. Countdown to Shutdown is phenomenal. Bogus Operandi. I mean, I don't think there's a weak song on the record. I love, on the previous album, 11 years ago, they started to dabble a little bit with like glam rock. And there's all these like cool glam rock elements on this record. And there's the usual garagey punk rock with the really quirky riffs. And lyrics are funny. It's just a fantastic record. The Hives. I can't wait to see them live again. Even though I've seen them live probably close to 100 times. I can't wait to see them live again. They're always a treat, and they're wonderful human beings, and they're a wonderful, wonderful band. And what a fucking record. Start to finish, the Hives. So if the Hives were the #1 punk album of the year, then the #1 spot is a hardcore record. When hardcore went metal, I was on board for it for a little bit. I love crossover. I made a list of, I made a video about that. And I love metal, just metal as metal is. And maybe one of these days I'll do a list about my favorite metal records or favorite metal bands or something. And when hardcore in the late 80s and early 90s started injecting metal into their music, I thought it was quite exciting. But then as it progressed and it became what we now would call maybe metalcore, I wasn't that invested and I wasn't that interested. By the mid to late 90s, I was into Northern Soul music and garage rock and so on. So a lot of the stuff, I didn't find it that interesting. I didn't mind it, but it wasn't what I was into. So I missed a lot of that, which is of course ironic because I play in a band where we base our entire existence of trying to, you know, plagiarize Slayer basically. And all this is funny and ironic because the #1 album of the year is a full-on metalcore album. And I'm of course talking about Zulu with A New Tomorrow. Zulu's from LA, it's their first album. They got some EPs and stuff out, I think. And this record blew me away. It feels like one of those records I've been waiting for ages. Musically, it's like metalcore of the mid to late 90s, like that Earth Crisis, like kind of chugga chugga, mixed with like blast beats and power violence. The songs are short, sharp, and focused, and super heavy, super aggressive. But it's one of those records where the songs themselves are pretty fucking amazing, but the sum of the parts becomes this big thing that's just amazing because it's experimental, it's bold, it's adventurous. It's one of those records where it's like there's interludes, there's like instrumental jazzy parts, there's like a hip hop song, there's poetry in between these super violent, awesome metal hardcore songs. So it's one of those records. It's like, it blew my mind basically when I heard it. I'm like, I can't believe how good this is. Also politically, I think it's fantastic because they're talking about the black experience, and they want to turn the discourse and not talk about the black experience only in terms of suffering, but talk in terms of like what's beautiful about the culture, what's beautiful about the struggle and the resistance, what's beautiful about their lives. And I think it's such a little thing to turn everything upside down. And it's just one of those records where it's like the revolutionary type of thinking that we need today. The world's a bit of a bleak place, and bands like Zulu, if they can inspire people, I think it's fantastic. So yeah, my favorite hardcore record of 2023, and one of the coolest records I've heard in a very, very, very long time. And yeah, can't wait to see these guys live. Anaya, that's like one of the masterminds behind the band, he played in a band called The Bots that Refuse brought on tour years ago, and I was so stoked when I realized that he was behind the Sulu project, so fucking kudos. There's something to be said about like the state of hardcore at the moment. I think it's fantastic. I think they're, you know, the width of what we have here. We have something like Ratcage that's like incredibly violent and propulsive and political, and then you have, you know, something like Scowl that's a bit more poppy and modern, and then you have Zulu, and then you have the Hives, which is like more old school. And I think it's beautiful. I think that for me, punk and hardcore has always been just like a starting point. Like you can start here and you can take it anywhere, you can do whatever you want with it. Fuck the gatekeepers, fuck the conservative punks that can't stand the fact that kids are breaking free out of their constraints. I love this. I am sure and I'm confident that with the popularity of hardcore, that the major labels would start sniffing around and we'll see some products. But I mean, the state of musicality and creativity that's happening right now is so exciting that I don't really care about that at the moment. When that happens, we'll deal with that, I guess. But yeah, punk and hardcore is fantastic, alive and kicking in 2023 and onwards towards 2024. So excited to see what this year will bring. I'm sure there's be plenty of more great punk and hardcore records. And yeah, so there you have it. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being following my channel. It means a lot to me. And next week I'll take some time off because it's January. I want to do other stuff. But then in 2 weeks I'll be back, and then it's full on action for the rest of the year, I hope. Yeah, so I'll see you in 2 weeks. Until then, stay well, my friends. Bye-bye.